Okay then, it's time for a little bit of Fruit Machine emulation history for this video. I've gone back through some of my old disk archives. I keep pretty good archives anyway in terms of ongoing file archives. The problem with, well, not the problem, but the thing with Fruit Machine emulation is that bits of the collection get replaced over the years, because obviously you don't keep every single version of a layout for a machine that's ever been released, or certainly what I tend to do is replace as better new versions get out, or are released rather. So for example, when Pook released a DX of a machine in the early years back in 2003, 2004, what I would generally then do is replace all previous versions of that machine in my Fruit Machine emulation collection. So a lot of this very old stuff doesn't exist in my current ongoing and backed up Fruit Machine collection. So I've gone right back here to this old CDR here, which as you can see is from December 2001. Fruit Machine emulation basically kicked off sort of mid-ish 2001, and what I'm going to be talking about in this video is a time when Fruit Machine emulation did not exist, because we all kind of take it for granted now. We just take it for granted, and we have done for so long it's almost easy to forget that there was a time when Fruit Machine emulation wasn't a thing, and this concept of just firing up an emulator on your PC to play a machine of your choice wasn't possible, didn't exist. So what I've done, I've taken a copy of that disc. It's still readable. It's been kept in this nice sort of pouch thing here over the years. It's been kept nice and dry. All the discs in here are still readable. There's all kinds of things going back. Now, there's something that I haven't pulled out here. I've still got backups of all my old Outlook Express archives. I will have the original emails that I exchanged with Wizard back in 2001. When I first bought the emulator. I'm not going to be pulling those out because at the end of the day they were, they were private emails. So I'm just going to be going back to what's on the actual disc here. So a lot of it I'm going to be doing from memory. I'm not even going to bother digging all these things out, even though I've still got other archives of emails and all sorts of stuff in there. We're just going to focus on what's on that disc there, which, like I say, still readable. I've taken a copy of it. And we'll talk about the time before Fruit Machine emulation existed, and specifically in this video, the very first time that I saw a Fruit Machine emulator running on my PC, and we'll be going back to some of the files that are on that disk to have a look at what the very first Fruit Machine emulation layouts looked like. So here is what's on that disc. As you can see, it's some very old versions of the emulator and kind of what an early Fruit Machine emulation collection would have looked like. The vast majority of these in here are the original layouts that were supplied with the MPU-34 emulator. You can see we've got the first couple of DXs there. And some old files here as well. I mean, look at that. 2001 is the date on there, the very first DX layout that we had. I've got a little text file called Niggles on the go, dated May 2001, and I didn't have many. That was it. They were all the niggles that had been noticed at that moment in time. But first of all, I want to go back even further than this. Even though we are looking at some old stuff here, I'm going to go back to before this even existed. Now, Fruit Machine simulators have been around forever. I remember playing this on the ZX Spectrum, and over the years as I got different computers, upgraded my computer hardware, I would always seek out Fruit Machine games because I'd always liked playing real Fruit Machines, and I remember through the 8-bit era and the 16-bit era I had all kinds of Fruit Machine games, all of them simulators. Now some of them weren't too bad. This was a Codemasters one as I remember, and this one wasn't too bad. It actually made a reasonable job of playing like a real Fruit Machine. But the problem with them was, and this was all of these simulators, either the jackpots were wrong, or the compensation was wrong, or you could find some kind of skill feature that if you could keep hitting it, it would repeat. I mean, like there, so we've got a £5 cash win. There was no such thing as a £5 cash win, or you'd find a skill feature that would just repeat forever and ever. And this carried on into the Amiga days and then into the PC days as well. And some of these simulators were kind of okay. They weren't that bad. I remember on the PC, some of them had passable sounds, passable music, reasonable real effects. You know, the graphics were okay, and up to a point that they would sometimes be reasonable representations of a real machine. But like I say, there'd always be something that would just break the illusion, and you'd come crashing back down to earth, and you'd be reminded that you were playing, as that word there, a simulator. That it was not a real fruit machine. It was something that was coded to be a little bit like a real fruit machine. Now, I was on board fairly early days with emulation of other things. I was on board with MAME pretty early on. I was a fairly early convert to MAME, you know, the multiple arcade machine emulator, and I remember waiting for new versions of MAME to be released. I'd look at the what's changed file and look at what new games had been added, and you'd go scouring off the internet with your dial-up modem to get the ROMs downloaded for the latest games that had been uploaded to MAME. So, I mean, MAME was originally released in 1997. I think I was on board with it, not a million miles after that. 97, 98, I was into MAME, and I'd always wait for the new games to be added in each new version of MAME, so I was playing stuff like this fairly early on. I was also into VPin MAME. VPin MAME was a sort of MAME extension for pinball, to run pinball ROM sets, and there was a bit of software called Visual Pinball that allowed people to recreate a combination of emulation and simulation to get pinball machines running in on your PC as well. And then of course there was emulation of older systems, and we've always had ZX Spectrum emulators, Mega Drive emulators, all that sort of thing. Although I've got to be honest, I'm a little bit flaky on the years on that one. Now, all through that, I'd always sort of thought to myself, wouldn't it be great if we had an actual fruit machine emulator, if there was such a thing as a fruit machine emulator? And I think a lot of people were doing this at the time, is they were having an occasional Google of it. Or would it even be a Google back then? It might have even been Yahoo. You may have been Yahooing it, or using your search engine of choice to look for fruit machine emulation. But there was absolutely nothing. You could scour the whole internet and there'd be nothing for fruit machine emulation. And I do remember thinking that kind of it wasn't going to happen. Maybe there would be no such thing as a fruit machine emulator. Maybe nobody was going to write one. I was aware that fruit machines, the AWP and club machines, these compensated machines, they were very much a UK phenomenon, whereas these other emulation products tended to, harvest people from all over the world. And I'd kind of have a search, I'd periodically have a little search and always turn up blank, and I'd just kind of accepted that we would never have a fruit machine emulator, and that the various simulators that were available as freeware or shareware, I think I even registered a few of them. They were generally quite cheap, they'd only cost a few quid to register. Again, like I say, some of them were okay, but I thought, you know what, we're never going to have an emulation of an actual fruit machine, and that was kind of where we were in early 2001. And we can put a time on this fairly accurately from the age of the files on that disk that I had there, and also we've got enough history from fruit machine emulation to know that the scene kind of publicly kicked off in early 2001, the first half of 2001. Now, At the time, in early 2001, I did quite a lot on the old Usenet mailing lists. If you remember those, they were kind of like a little bit of a precursor of social media there. You would have a newsreader. Outlook Express at the time had a newsreader built into it. And what you'd basically do is you'd download a list of all the groups that were available on your ISP's news server, and then from the names of the groups you could filter out the ones that you were interested in, and then you could download the headers for the news group, which were kind of like your threads, if you will. And from there you could download the threads and read them. They were like uk.rec.gambling, and I'm sure we all remember the old alt.binaries and the very many variations thereon, where you could get pictures if you were that way intended and quite patient and prepared to wait for your dial-up modem to download them. And I was on, and I'll be lying, I cannot remember, and I'd have to go back to those discs. Maybe I've still got some header archives on there or something like that. But there was a few UK gambling-based news groups that I kept an eye on. So, like I say, it may have been something like uk.rec.gambling. I think there was a CMA mailing list on there, you know, the old Club Machine Association thing. And I was actually using these to sort of get some contacts when it came to real fruit machines. And whilst in these groups, players were fairly wary of posting stuff publicly, I'd actually got in touch with a few people behind the scenes, because your email addresses were public when you were posting to these groups, and that was where I'd actually started to get some of my very first pieces of information. And by early 2001, I'd been told about forcing. I think I possibly had the Psycho Cash Beast and the Lot of Luck knockbacks, things like that. So I was mainly just using these groups for real fruit machines, and that was what the chat in there was about. It was about real fruit machines. And just kind of one day, sometime in early 2001, in amongst all the messages was a header posted by Wizard, the coder, of course, of Multiple Fruit Machine Emulator as we know today. And it was a very low-key message. He's never been particularly one for blowing his own trumpet. And the message was very, very simple. It was something to the effect of, oh, hi guys, I've written a Fruit Machine emulator. If you're interested, there's a link to a demo here, or just email me and ask me for a demo, and I'll send you a demo so you can have a look at it. And if there's a full version that you can buy that's got more layouts in it, and you can buy design tools as well. And it was so low key, it was so matter of fact, bearing in mind that there wasn't just me. There's a lot of people at the time who were thinking of, Fruit Machine emulation as being this holy grail that would never exist. I just kind of read it and thought, I don't know, I kind of thought, you know what, if I had a Fruit Machine emulator, I'd be shouting from the rooftops about it. I wouldn't be as low-key as that. And I almost just ignored it. I almost thought, nah, it's not going to be a Fruit Machine emulator, whatever. But I thought, well, got nothing to lose, so we'll just cancel that. I can't now. I genuinely can't remember if Wizard had either put a link in the message so you could download it off the internet, or you had to email him. Either way, I did get hold of the demo, and what I ended up with was something on my PC that looked far more basic than that. It had a single executable in there and a couple of folders, because the demo came with two layouts. It came with Alphabet, the older Barcrest MPU4 machine, and it also came with this one here, Super Blackjack. So I downloaded the demo. The instructions for it were quite simple. I mean, fundamentally, you actually run the thing the same thing as you do now. So as you can see, it is quite similar to what you would do now. You would load up the MPU 3.4 as it was called back here. It was a 5.2. This is an old version. You would load in the emulator. You'd go, we can see there that this is what I got. I got this demo, where you could pay £30 for just the emulator and some layouts, or you could pay £100 for the version with the design tools enabled. And I wasn't interested in the design tools. I just wanted to play the games. And I recognized, I mean, from the list, you could recognize some of these as machines that at the time had been in the pub in the not too distant past. So you would load it up, and what you do is you go to load game, and then you just browse down your folder and pick the one that you wanted. Now, I only had two to choose from. I had Alphabet and Super Blackjack. Now, I wasn't particularly interested in Alphabet. There was no emulated sound for the AY chip in MPU4 machines at the time, and I didn't recognise it anyway, but Super Blackjack was of far more interest to me. And the reason that Super Blackjack really caught my attention, even though it's a club machine, and I'm not into club machines, I've never played them, but Super Blackjack immediately caught my eye because for a period of time in the early 90s, about 93, 94, I had worked at a snooker club in Bury, which is up in North Manchester. And I'd be genuinely hard pushed to take. It's gone now. The building has gone. It's all been knocked down. But it was somewhere around this area. I've even got it in my head that it may have been along this street here, where we can see it's all car parks now. It may have been along there. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter at all, in fact. But there was a snooker club somewhere around here that I worked in part-time while I was at uni. I was doing anything to make a bit of money back then because I was losing it all on fruit machines. I needed every penny I could get my hand on so that I could feed fruit machines with it. And I was working in a snooker club there. Now, in the time that I worked there, they had a few different machines. They had a Cops and Robbers Club. They had the club version of the Ace machine Grand National. And they also had Super Blackjack Club. Now, the thing with this new club is they had really, really strict rules on the staff not playing fruit machines. You were not permitted to play the machines. You were not permitted to kind of help your friends play them or anything like that. They had real strict separation. So it was, on pain of being sacked if you went, if you put any money in them or tried to tip anyone off or anything like that. But they were there and they got played and they made money. They were quite popular with the patrons of the snooker club. And they were kind of in the bar area. So even though it was a snooker club, and it's generally a bit quiet in a snooker club, the bar area was set back from the snooker area. And the fruit machines were, they always had two of them at any given time. They were in the bar area. Because the bar area was a bit noisier, the fruit machines had a little bit of volume to them, so you could hear them from the bar. So when I was working at the bar, or when I was clearing glasses or cleaning the ashtrays or whatever it was that I was doing, if the fruit machines were being played, I could hear them. And you're talking 93, 94 now, and I can pinpoint it pretty accurately, because I remember I was working in there when Ayrton Senna got killed in that race, and also when Kurt Cobain committed suicide. I remember both those things were on the news during the period of time that I was working in that snooker club. Both of those things, I believe, were 1994. And that for me was the real bad old days for the fruit machines. That was when I was well and truly into them. I was playing them all the time, anytime I possibly could. So even though I wasn't allowed to play the machines that were in the snooker club, I was fascinated by them, and if I possibly could, I would watch them, even if I was just watching them in attract mode. And if people were playing them, I was absolutely, as much as I could get away with watching people play them, that is what I would do. And what that meant is that I became intimately acquainted with everything about them. So even in the case of this Super Blackjack Club, even though I had never played it, I knew everything about it. I knew every kind of sound effect. I knew every little jingle. I knew how the machine played. I knew what the features did, all that sort of thing. And that was why, when I saw that Super Blackjack was one of the two machines that were available in this MPU 3.4 demo, that was the machine that I loaded up first. So that's what the real machine looks like over on the right there. As you can see, this one's set to £100 jackpot, but other than that, it's identical. This is the machine that I was so familiar with. This is the machine that had been burned into my brain at the snooker club. And if you ever went to these clubs back in the day, you'll remember that they used to keep machines for an awful long time. It's not like pub machines where they rotate them out every, 6 weeks or 8 weeks or something like that. Clubs tended to keep their machines on site for an awful lot longer. They would become a very familiar fixture. And the snooker club that I worked out had this machine for an awful long time. It was on site in there for a long time. And plenty long enough for me to kind of learn everything about it, the way the attract mode worked, all the sounds, all the music, everything. So when I first loaded up the MPU34 demo with this layout running in it, this is about what I was presented with, because on the demo version, if you tried to put money in, it wouldn't let you. I've actually got an older version. I don't think this is the demo version, but it's a pre-registration version. Can you see there? It says not available if you try to put money in. So what you actually got on the demo when you loaded it up was something like this. You had, I think it was 20 credits or 25 credits or something like that, and you couldn't put any more money in. So this is basically what I saw the very first time I ran a Fruit Machine emulator on my PC. But at this moment in time, I'm thinking, nah, it's not an emulator. It's not really an emulator. And I remembered what the real machine looked like, and I was thinking to myself, yeah, okay, the guy's not on a bad job. The fruit symbols look correct, and the basic layout of the machine is okay, and yeah, it kind of looks like the real thing, but I still don't believe it's an emulator. There's no such thing as a Fruit Machine emulator. But what are you going to do next? Of course, you're going to press start. There's nothing else to press. You can't put any money in. There's only one light flashing at you. So I then started playing off a few credits, and straight away I heard the sounds. I heard the real sounds, the real dropping sounds, and I'm thinking, crikey, that actually sounds like the real machine. That's making the same sounds that the machine made. I remember that. And I think I got holds, and I pressed hold, and it made the correct hold noises, and then I pressed cancel, and it made the same noise as when you pressed, or when the players in the club had been pressing the buttons cancel and holds in the club. And I'm thinking, bloody hell, it's not a bad simulation. He's got the reels right. He's got the reels right. He's got the sounds right. It seems fairly convincing. And then I got nudges, and the nudge tune kicked in. Now, the nudge tune on this machine, again, like everything else about it, had been truly burned into my brain. It's that that, and the emulator started playing that music. So let's go. I don't want it to have too much volume, but we need to be able to hear it. So I might get the balance a little bit wrong here. Let's give it a little bit of volume. So this is what I started doing in early 2001. You're going back the best part of 17 years here. So I played a couple of, I don't know how loud that is, I do apologise, on the video. There's the music. Oh, and the loops were all over the place back then as well. The sound didn't loop very well. It should loop back in a moment, I think. Let's get nudges again, and we'll be able to hear that sample again. As you can see, there was no smooth reels then either. So I was getting that, but it was the nudge music that did it for me. Let's wait till we get nudges again. And there was something about that. It was hearing that nudge music. It was the nudge music that somehow convinced me. I can't tell you exactly why, but it was that. At that moment, the penny dropped, and I thought, oh my Christ, this is actually an emulator. This is actually a Fruit Machine emulator. Some bloody genius has only gone and written an actual Fruit Machine emulator. This is the real thing. It's here running on my PC, and I got a feature. I mean, if you ever play this machine in anger, it's actually got a pretty good sound package. It had quite a good full sound package. When you get the feature, it plays some nice tunes. When you collect the features, it plays some nice tunes as well, which obviously I am failing to get completely at the moment, but I played out the however many credits it was, 20, 30 credits, whatever it was. I played them out, and once you'd played them out like that, that was it. All that you could do then, you couldn't put any more money in because you got that. Or even that, the coin input may have been disabled. All you could do then is go back to the start. You could load it back in and have another go with the however many credits it was, and once they'd gone, you had to load it back in again. And I played it time and time again. I would just keep loading it back in and playing it again. Every single time, just blown away by the fact that this was an emulator. This was a Fruit Machine emulator running on my PC. I couldn't email Wizard quick enough. I was like, we all know the Futurama meme with Fry with the big handful of cash. Shut up and take my money. I was like, yes, I will take it. Please send me this now. Now the collection even then ran to a few hundred meg, so we were back in the days of dial-up modems, so there was no quick way. It was a disc in the post affair. But I do remember, because I was pestering him dreadfully, saying, can you please send me the layout? Can you send me a layout to play? Can you send me a layout to play? As memory serves, I can't remember. I think he waited to get there. I think I had to send a check through the post. I don't think there's any PayPal or anything like that. But I've got it in my head that once he had the payment, he was then happy to email me the full, or he sent me a registration code for the emulator, because what I think you had to do then was, you see there, you got this, you could generate a serial number, and if you told Wizard your serial number, he, I think, emailed me back a registration key. At that point, that activated the emulator, and what he also did was he emailed me a couple of other layouts. I think he sent me Pot Black and Red Hot Roll. I've got in my head were a couple of other of the early layouts that he sent to me. All we had at the time were all classics. So I think Red Hot Roll was one of the other ones. Is that would be one of the very early I think Steve Phipps classics as well. And you had to put a delay in back then because it wasn't so. As you can see, they looked fairly basic, but that they were there, they were present, and you could play them. And I absolutely played the ass out of them. And then when the disc came with the full collection of layouts, which I think, did we establish it was 39 layouts at the time, if you have a look at that. And then I got the disc with the full 39 layouts on it, and to be quite honest, I don't think I played anything else for weeks and weeks and weeks, even though I didn't particularly like, there were quite a few on these, but some of the stuff like Luxor, Madhouse, Top Tanner, Vervis Mania, Jolly Gems, Pot Black, Take Your Pick, Cash Track, Hijinks, Bold Links, Magnificent Sevens and Cash Lines, all those were good, solid, Barcrest, high-tech AWPs, and I just played them and played them and played them. But the very first one, the one where the penny really dropped for me, that I was playing a Fruit Machine emulator, was on Super Blackjack Club, and the thing that did it was the very first time that I heard that nudge sample, and that was when I was convinced that I was actually looking at a Fruit Machine emulator running on my PC. And what I also thought was, oh my god, there are going to be so many other people who will be as thrilled by this as I am. I thought there are going to be other people out there who've been Googling, not Googling, but internet searching for fruit machine emulation, and they've just come up blank and come up blank and come up blank, because at the time you could literally search for, fruit machine emulation on the internet and you'd come up with nothing. There'd be absolutely nothing. And it was only because I'd seen that post to this UK mailing list on Usenet from Wizard talking about his emulator, saying, "Oh, hi guys, I've written a fruit machine emulator." And if it weren't for that, I would have missed it. So that's the situation we were in early 2001. There was a fruit machine emulator up and running, and it occurred to me that other people would want to know about this. And that's a story that we shall continue in due course.